Welcome to Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose. I'm Deremy Dove, and I'm joined by my tag team partner Jose Ruiz, and we're bringing you a special emergency pod for our YouTube channel because this week a lot of things have really come about. A lot of coaching changes, historic coaching changes that have changed, really the landscape of football, college and pro. We have Pete Carroll, wound up stepping down slash being let go after that
Yeah,
run in Seattle with the Seahawks. We have Bill Belichick after that historic and legendary dynasty, 24 seasons, being let go from New England Patriots. And some might say the biggest shocker, Nick Saban retiring after that great dynasty, 6 national championships at Alabama. He was there from 2007 to 2023. So, Jose, I'm glad. I didn't know if you were be down, but you wanted to do this emergency pod on the YouTube channel. So what jumped out to you the most that spurred you on to want to do this?
yeah, Deremy, man, and it's good to be on with you as always, bro. And yeah, this week has been nuts, and it's Black Monday in the NFL, as you all know. If you're not familiar with it, it's just like it's that first Monday after the regular season, and a lot of head coaches not a lot, but head coaches usually get let go on that Monday. That Monday following the last weekend of the NFL regular season, anyway, and this year was no shortage of that. And you talked about Belichick, you talked about Pete Carroll. There's a bunch of other head coaches that were let go as well. But again, those were the ones where I think Pete Carroll came a little later, a couple of days later. I think him and Belichick did, but um, yeah, I was shocked, man. You know what I mean? Like more, I think the Saban piece, like you said, was more of a shock to me. I had a feeling Belichick was done in New England. It's been a long time. It's a long run. You talked about 24 years. That's a long time in the NFL, man. And I didn't know. I didn't think Pete Carroll was done because I mean, Seattle had a nice season. I think they would have had a much better season. They would have stayed healthy, but because for a minute there they were playing some good ball, and but they got beat up, and they kind of like sputtered at the end there, and and I get it. Like he's been there also a long time, and you know, I I can't remember who I was having this conversation with, and it was just like it doesn't matter like the head coach, like it could be the greatest head coach of all time. In this case, we have a couple, right? And but if you're there a long time, man, that message kind of gets stale. You know what I'm saying? Like especially if a player's been there for a while. So I think that started happening here with these, especially the Patriots and the Seahawks. And I was just shocked, man. And me and you were texting, and I think you put it perfectly in one of those texts, man. It was just like it was like a new era of football. You know what I mean? It's coming, And the crazy part is, and we'll get to this, like two of those positions already been filled, and by the time we recorded this podcast, so it's going to be a shift. You know what I mean? Like a big time shift in the NFL, big time shift. I think an even more bigger shift in college football.
No, and it comes down to, I guess, these need to be celebrated. All three to an extent,
Right.
definitely, but definitely Saban and Belichick. Some people may say, and that can be late for later on how they went out. But I look at just these great runs, and I look at Saban and Belichick in particular. And Jose, I wonder, not even looking at the runs themselves, looking at these two men. Do you think like we'll have coaches like these guys again, and not even the accomplishment, let alone, but just like the way these two guys are, their personality, their disposition. Do you think they're the last of an old breed, or do you think that we'll still see guys like this?
I don't think so. If I'm being honest, and I'll say this too, like all three of these coaches coached until their 70s, right? And I don't think we'll see that anymore either. I don't think, especially in the pros, I don't think maybe Andy Reid, but these owners are not going to be as patient anymore as they have been in the past, and especially in these organizations, they had a lot of success. So it's easy to be more patient when you have a lot of success, but um, to keep it to Saban and Belichick, it's just, I think it's an end of an era, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it really, really is. And from where these guys came from and how they started coaching and to like how they worked themselves up the ranks, and you don't really, that's changed too. You know what I mean? Like that's definitely changed too. You got coaches, really exceeding like very early on, and you got guys. I mean, look at what the coach did last year. Jeff Saturday got a head coaching job. He was just on ESPN. You know what I'm saying? Like
And he's back on
and
ESPN.
he's back on ESPN, right? So you see things like that. The way these guys, the way they work through through college, pros, like all of that. I don't think you'll see that anymore. Not like these two guys.
No, and I just think a lot of time, football's a tough game mentally and physically, but these guys they coached hard.
Right.
And you could hear the stories about whether Alabama, in particular, Saban and Belichick, Alabama players. You hear about Patriot players, even players back in the day. Whether Cleveland Browns playing for both of them, all those things. These guys coached hard, and you're looking at the way the game has changed and is continuing to change. I honestly think Pete Carroll's way is going to be more of the new way
Yep.
that we're going to see from coaches, or what's going to attract players, and Pete Carroll with his, and I think that was naturally him. So I'm not knocking
Yeah.
Pete Carroll, but that positivity, like let's go get it, man, and all right, and not the doom and gloom that definitely Belichick and also Nick Saban could bring sometimes
Yep.
too. Like I think that's not going to be the way of the future, and I think having these guys who, like you said, they were almost like born to be football coaches. I think that's going out. That's going to be different.
Yeah, and you talked about it. Like even the way teams are practicing now, it's much different than what it used to be even 5, 10 years ago. And these guys came up in an era where you could say you coach players really hard, you practice them hard, 2 a days, all that stuff. Like that's what they were accustomed to, for so many years. Because both these coaches started coaching in the early '70s, and that's a long time, man. That's a long time to be. And again, they started off, college ranks and things like that. But still, like that's a long time. And the game and how you coach has shifted so much, has changed so much, man. Like it's, I'm sure for them, it was a big adjustment in these last few years. You know what I mean? Like, but I don't think you're going to see that style of coaching. You just can't in the NFL. You can't do it anymore like that. So it's definitely a changing of the guard, man. Like, and you talked about Pete Carroll a little bit, like, even him going to Seattle, I didn't think that was going to work out because I didn't think that like positivity and like that, that pom pom, like, players coach was going to work in the NFL. It might work for a year or two, but I really didn't think it was going to work. And he made that work, and he did a great job there. So I don't know, like, and it had me thinking, Deremy. Now I wanted to ask you, like, what coaching style, like those, we have two coaching, like, with Belichick and Saban kind of were like cut from that same cloth. And then again, you just talk about Pete Carroll and how he did things. I mean, I don't think either one is right or wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, in my opinion, but
Mm-mm.
where, if you were to be able to pick a coach, like what type of style do you think, what type of style would you want to go with if you were like the owner of a team and you had to hire a coach?
Between these guys, you're
Right,
saying?
right.
If I'm the owner of a team, that's different. I would go with the Belichick Saban way.
Right. Me
And the
too.
reason why is, I mean, you phrase it that way, the owner has a big part of it. So with all these places, you have to allow somebody to create that culture. And to me, you can kind of counteract it in a way. So the way and I think that's why I was glad to see Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick out there together,
Yeah.
because they go hand in hand together. And Bill Belichick needed Robert Kraft because he kind of started that in Cleveland a little bit, but trying to build his program. But Art Modell wasn't. He's still part
Yeah.
of that old guard. He wasn't down for like some of these changes and was really questioning Bill. And we know how that ended. But Robert Kraft saw something in Belichick, liked him, gave him that other chance. A lot of people said don't give him a chance, and as tough and doom and gloom as Belichick was, Robert Kraft made you feel like you're part of the family. And you hear how he talks about those players, from Brady to Gronk to Willie McGinnis, all those guys. And I remember hearing like James Harrison. I mean, he was on the Steelers all those years. He went to the Patriots in the end. And he said, "It's no comparison. The Patriots are just first class. They have the nicest everything." So in that regard, I feel like I could take Belichick in Saban's way.
Yeah, I would too. That would be my way as well, because I think also as an owner, I can, I can definitely 100%, even though I should anyway, I can definitely, like, I'm not worried about football or player personnel, none of that stuff. Like, these guys got it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think Robert Kraft did an excellent job doing that. Like, he was just, he was behind the scenes kind of a owner. He wasn't like a Jerry Jones or something like that. I think when it came to Brady, he kind of had to step in a little bit, but I think if you're an owner, I think that's the type of style you would want, I guess. I don't know. For me, and I'm assuming, like you just said, like for you as well, I think that's like, I can't imagine, like, again, like a CEO of a company, like you kind of let just someone just run everything, and just, you have to be there and have their back when needed. And I think Kraft did a really good job. I think for Pete Carroll, he kind of got the same thing in Seattle. So it was just, I agree. I would rather them hard nosed football guys that were born to coach, and I think Saban and Belichick, like we mentioned earlier, were two guys that were born for that.
Well, I think it's interesting. It's tough because a lot of these owners coming from other places, other, like, they made their money on other things. They kind of get into this for the glory, to kind of get that attention, to kind of show off to other wealthy friends, like, look what we have and all this stuff. Robert Kraft was a Patriot fan. This was his dream forever,
Yeah,
and honestly got it from It's funny, he got the Patriots from Michael Jackson, like the Victory Tour with the Jacksons, and that wound up being a connect. If you go see Robert Kraft's office, he has a big poster of the Jacksons Victory Tour, because that wound up leading to him get it 10 years later. But one thing about Belichick and Saban that I do say I like is a lot of head coaches they're like CEOs in their own way of these programs, whether college or pro, right? And I think with those two guys, they are CEOs of the football operations only. So
right.
how you want to present and blah blah blah, they don't care about that. How the media, as we saw how Belichick was, he never cared about that, especially him. Saban was kind of surly with the media too a lot of
Yeah,
times.
he was.
But I think they're going to care about the football operations, and these guys had something. There's two things that they had that I really admire. They were great teachers. They taught really well, and I think that's something that, like, is just huge with coaches, but especially football coaches. Is like, I don't know, if there was one kind of like major, or like I would want a coach to have, is like, were they a teacher, like something in that regard, because you got to be able to like communicate and teach guys
Right.
different things. And from everything I read about both these guys, I've read a lot over the years. When we all work jobs, we all work 8-hour, 10-hour, 12-hour shifts. And let's be real, I mean, we work hard, but are we working, take out the lunch break, are we working 7.5 hours straight through? Not really.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, we're human. But these guys, they were in the office for 12 hours. People were like, they worked 12. They were doing something football related for those 12 hours. Like, and that's like, man, that's impressive.
That is, man. Like, and we've mentioned this a bunch of times on this show, man. Like a head coach, and especially these two levels in college football, and definitely NFL, pro football. That's a lot of hours you're gonna have to put in. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things you're gonna have to sacrifice. There's a lot of time you're gonna have to sacrifice. And we were talking about it in our last episode when we were talking about one of our last episodes when we were talking about the 88 49ers, and Bill Walsh and George Seifert, and we were talking about those guys and how they had like a shower and things like that in their office, like, so that way there's no need for them to leave and go anywhere, right? They can have everything right there, and And that's what these guys want. They want a comfortable couch so they can take some naps throughout. Like, it's just crazy, man. And, there's no wonder why, you see these guys come in and they get divorced, like, and that's never a good thing, but it just all leads to the sacrifice that these guys are putting into their careers. You know what I mean? Like we did an episode early on, one of our first episodes on Andy Reid, and that was another thing too, another supposedly knock from the media that Andy was putting in so much time that he was quote unquote neglecting his family. You know what I'm saying? Like in all these issues with his his two sons and things like that. Like it's a sad job, man, to be honest with you, man. Like it's a hard job. You're successful, you're going to make a lot of money, like you're going to get a lot of praise, but it's I don't know if I can do that, Deremy.
Well, for me, what's impressive with these guys and something that Pete Carroll did not have, but Saban and Belichick did. Honestly, once Saban did his thing and he stepped down, I've been really looking at the Saban and Belichick documentary that's on
Yeah.
Max, and I've watched it a million times, but it was just cool because of like how this broke down. 18 hours apart, these two guys
Right.
were linked, and same kind of things. Like to just rewatch it again, and what these two guys did that very few coaches have been able to do in any sport is get to that top of the mountain and then, like they said, stay on top of it. And that
Right.
takes a certain kind of focus and discipline. And for me, that's really the sacrifice,
Yep.
Jose. They, to me, had greater sacrifices than most coaches because they never really enjoyed that spoil. And that's why they won so much. But, they never really enjoyed it. Or we think that. I think some people are wired differently and maybe enjoying, I think Nick Saban, especially him, I remember Lane Kiffin would do an impression of him where he's like, fun? What do you mean fun? Holding the trophy is fun. Seeing your players hug under the confetti is fun. That's fun. What do you mean fun? And I'm like, Nick Saban kind of seems like that. Like he's
Right.
like fun is like he doesn't compute that. Like fun? What do you mean? Like we'll have fun when we hold the trophy up. That's it. And then we hand it back, and then tomorrow we're on to the next thing.
Right.
Like those two guys just seem to be wired that way, and I think you gravitate toward people who you're like you share that connection, that drive with, and I think that's why at a very young age, like early on in their coaching careers, these two guys, connected so well, and their football journeys like really went hand in hand.
And that's why they have so much respect for each other. It's just because they're very, very similar. You know what I mean? Like the way they approach their crafts. You know what I mean? Like how they approach their organizations. Because again, like college football, that's an organization too. And you're right. Like I think there's just it looks like they're not having a good time. You know what I mean? Like it just looks like they're people say miserable and things like that. But again, to your point, Deremy, I think that focus is what separates some guys. You know what I mean? Like you talked about Lane Kiffin. That's definitely like a big separation piece between him and Nick Saban. And I think that's why, early on in this podcast too, we did a coaching tiers. To me, that's how they separate themselves, right? Like, you can want to have fun and enjoy a lot of that stuff, which is fine. Like, cause I'm going to do that. You know what I mean? I'm going to enjoy all of this stuff, like all this success and everything. But there's other guys who are different, man. And, other coaches who are different. And it's just like, as soon as they host that trophy, the next day, they're already looking at the draft and what we're adding and who's going and all these things, man. So again, them being wired so different and doing things so different, starting a lot of trends in the, like, for coaches and things like that. Like before, Jeremy, I mean, we can speak to this definitely, like just watching sports and all that. Coaches before had to like play the press and, have good relationships and know how to like handle that. Like, and not to say all of them had really good relationships with the press, but it wasn't like like Belichick is just like, all right, what do you think about? We're going to try to win. And that's like, next question. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like these guys were able to do that. And now everybody does that. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just, it's crazy, man. Like what these guys have done. And with that success, we're able to kind of like change a lot of stuff for coaches moving forward is truly remarkable.
No, absolutely. They kind of stuck to that script. Coaches back in the day, the media wasn't as big,
Right.
so like you knew who the media
Right. You got
was.
relationships and stuff with
Yeah, a
these.
lot of times it was 6, 8 guys.
Yeah.
It's easy to know everyone's first name then. It's all Jim, Paul, and
Yeah.
Rich. So like it was real easy to do
Rich is a
that.
good one. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, but as it changed and also I think it's knowing their personalities. Bill Parcells could enter that. He was good at that.
Right.
He knew how to do that. That worked for him. Bill Bell, and the thing is, I hear that both of these guys are, when you in private time, very engaging, good conversation. I mean, we've seen Belichick when you get him talking about football history. He's engaged. He's
He's
hooked.
great. He
He's
was
so
great in that
fascinating.
100 greatest NFL players. We
He,
talked about it. He was amazing.
he was awesome. I mean, him giving the history about long snappers, like I've watched that clip a million times. Like he is good on that, but I think he knew that he couldn't schmooze it up with the media and go back and forth. That's not him. So I think he had to protect himself. But Jose, I want to ask you, looking at Saban and Belichick, what do you think if you had to pick one? What's their greatest moments as coaches?
Oh man, as head coaches, right? I'm assuming like that's
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
question. All right. I think, man, that's tough, man. I think for Belichick, that Super Bowl, that first one, that Super Bowl against the Rams, I think for me, and dude, I get into these arguments all the time on Twitter and things like that, on social media in general, where a lot of people are like downplaying Belichick's impact on that Patriots dynasty, and it's just like, oh, Tom Brady, and he doesn't have Tom Brady. He's an average coach or below average coach, and you know, I get the record kind of shows that, but I think that first Super Bowl showed Belichick's greatness. You know what I mean? Like just the overall, like how much of a defensive genius he is, and I'm a huge fan of Belichick, and I just think the way that game was like perfect for him. You know what I mean? Like it was just a microcosm of like just the type of coach that he is, and it was just like ball control and Brady. A lot of the Kevin Falk check downs and all this stuff, right? And him controlling that offense and physically just beating the shit out of that Rams offense and just pretty much putting the blueprint out on how to beat that Rams team at a time where it was really tough for a lot of teams to do that. And for me, I just think that's a big highlight of his. I would also go to the Super Bowl where they beat the Rams, and it was something very similar to that too. And it's just like I was
The
watching,
LA Rams.
yeah, the LA Rams, yeah, with McVay and all them. I just watching that game, I was just sitting back and I was just like, man, like this dude is a genius, man, because it's another offense that people could not figure out. And then Belichick comes in, you give him a week or two to figure it out, and he's going to handle that. And again, it was a Patriots offense that was subpar at best, and I think they scored 17 points in that Super Bowl, and he held that Rams team to like 10 or 13. It was just a master class, as they say, man. It was just genius defensive coaching, man. And so for me, like those two are huge moments for me. Saban, oof, man, that's a tough one there, man. I had to come back. You have to come back to me on that one.
No, I think for me, I look at the quarterback position and their defensive guys. But I look at Saban and that championship game against Georgia,
Okay,
and then
yeah,
having the guts to bench Jalen and put Tua in, like in the national championship game. Like if that game gets out of hand, he gets really ripped for it.
right.
Like they look at him great for Tua being a freshman QB and coming in there. It was truly amazing. And, it's so easy to forget, but I know you don't. I know I don't. I remember in 2001 and when Bledsoe went down and Brady went in there and he's winning games, he's playing efficient, he's playing well, but
Yeah,
he's not killing it. And there was a QB controversy and people were wondering, who do you go with? And Bledsoe was at the time, now that the number seems small, but $100 million quarterback. Now we see it's
Yeah.
way greater, but in 2001, that was huge. And I'm sure a lot of people in the organization, there's pressure there. He's a second-year head coach. And, hey, go with the guy you got. He has the big contract, this 6th-round draft pick, but he said, never get that pressure. I'm going to do what's best for the team. And he said TEAM, team. And that takes a lot of guts to do. So I look at the QB positions and what for two guys who were known for their defense, what they did in crucial situations really kind of, for one, it spurred on the dynasty. For another one, it created the dynasty.
Right. And for, you know, people watching this episode on YouTube, like Bledsoe was a star. You know what I mean? Like he was a star in the league, and I'm not calling him the best quarterback in the league, but he was a known, very, very known name. You talked about that contract at a time where a lot of dudes weren't getting that contract, and he was a big deal. And to make that decision to go with a rookie quarterback, man, like that was a big one there, and that's a make or break. Excuse me, that's a make or break type of decision there, and he made it, and obviously it panned out, but like you talked about, like he was like Brady was very efficient, and those teams won because they had great defense. You know what I'm saying? And I think obviously Belichick was a huge part of that. So yeah, I think that's a huge moment there. That's a good one. No, that's a really good one there. I like that one there.
No, are these two guys? Are they the greatest college coach and NFL coach of all time?
I think so. I mean, you can't. I mean, if you're basing it off success, it's an easy yes. I mean, I know college football, folks can argue like, the Bear Bryants of the world, right? Like so many other coaches, and but you can't argue what Saban did in Alabama. And then again, you can look at just Alabama and you go, man, he's the greatest college football coach of arguably of all time, and you forget that he won a national championship at LSU, and he would have won a couple more in LSU if he would have stayed there. You know what I mean? Like they were starting to be, they were a powerhouse at that point, and they were getting all those recruits and all that, and LSU was going to be on top for as long as he was going to be there, and he even had success in Michigan State, so I think for me, I think it's an easy slam dunk that Saban and Belichick are the greatest coaches of all time. And I know folks again, I was talking about earlier, like to argue the Brady Belichick thing and who gets more success. I know we talked about it in one of our episodes. I just think going back to the points what we were making earlier about like their coaching philosophy and style and demeanor and all that, like you can't take the success that Belichick had in New England and just put it all on Brady and his greatness. Like, no, it was definitely a two-man operation there, and he definitely deserves credit for that. You also look at, what he did in Cleveland and what he was building in Cleveland. Cleveland was going to be successful eventually if he would have continued to stay there. As a, I know we're talking about head coach, but defensive coordinator with the Giants and all that, what he did there, like, it's just, these two guys for me are the mountaintop. You know what I'm saying? Like, and these other coaches are just climbing to try to get to them. What do you think, Deremy?
Saban for sure. Belichick, I'm still not there yet, but Nick Saban is a slam dunk. He's the greatest college coach ever. Belichick, I'm not there for him as the greatest NFL coach, but he's close, and we'll see. He wants to continue coaching, and he's going to get. Well, it wouldn't surprise me. I think it'd be cool in a way if he's like, none of these spots are the right fit. I'm going to wait out a year and see. Like, I'll be like, go ahead, Bill. But I think he probably will go somewhere. Saban to me is definitely the greatest college coach ever. I don't think that's really close at this point.
Yeah.
I think, he's past the Bear. He's like, nobody's close to him. Like, just what he did, it's just been incredible. And the way he did it, of just at a time when you're looking at in late 2000s, he was coming there in 2007, and Alabama had not. The name had his history, but hadn't been anything relevant, in my opinion,
Right.
Felt like 15 years, really,
Yeah.
that Alabama was something at that point. So the fact that he came in there and really just put that university on the map again, but really put, and you can give a little bit of credit, definitely also to Urban Meyer in Florida, but what they did for the SEC
Yeah.
and what they did for that conference, it's just unbelievable. So I think Nick Saban's there. Belichick, I think, just gets hurt because of, honestly, I just think the innovation part.
Yeah. No, I
I
100%
don't
get
think
that.
he has that like some other NFL coaches.
Right.
I still look at like just what Paul Brown did, and it's just hard to like just go by that. And Belichick's a smart like defensive coach, but I don't know if like he's like, man, like the way we talk about. I'm not saying Belichick's not ahead of Bill Walsh, but like, oh, Bill Walsh with the West Coast, or Tom Landry and all his thing. Like Belichick doesn't hit me in that way, so that's why I don't call him the greatest coach yet.
Right. And then like again, like I was saying earlier, like the argument being made that a lot of that success was Brady. You look post Brady, and it's a lot of like 500 ball. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I can see how people would think that, and I agree. I think Paul Brown, he's the one all time top two. You know what I'm saying? Best coaches of all time. So yeah, no, I like that. But again, Nick Saban is just a slam dunk. To me, like there's just no arguing the success he had. All the like players that he put in the NFL. I mean, you can just with an Alabama team over his run, like just create a team there and put that team in the NFL, and you're not beating that team. You know what I'm saying? If you think about all the players that came out of that program. But yeah, no, I think those two
Well,
definitely Saban and
and
Belichick's
I
definitely
th-
up there.
and I think also what gets me with Saban is early on in the winning. Offensively they were very still kind of archaic.
Right.
So the fact that he was being able to recruit these guys, bring them in, and on both sides of the ball, minus like quarterback for the longest
Yeah.
time, really.
Yeah.
Every other position on offense, it was like, man, you're getting the best of the best, and it was kind of old school, it's kind of archaic, and that's kind of what impressed me, which was like, I don't understand how these players, especially on offense, want to come to Alabama, and
Mm-hmm.
you're running like, I was like, how are you getting Julio Jones, and Julio Jones is blocking, and he's a heck of a blocker. But
Yeah.
I'm like, how are you picking Alabama? So that's where I give Saban so much credit. I'm like, man, and I'm like, man, just force Greg McElroy to throw the ball, you could beat him, or force AJ McCarron,
Yeah.
but teams couldn't do it.
Absolutely not, man. And some of those guys he had on defense were a big reason for that. So I was thinking about something. I read something earlier today, Deremy, and it was a quote from Reggie Bush, and he was kind of like talking shit on Nick Saban a little bit, and I don't know if he was asked this question or what, but he was talking about how the NIL and all of that, how that's changing college football, kind of like pushing Saban out. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like him seeing the writing on the wall and going like, oh, I'm not going to always have these 5-star recruits. Like, let me just go now while I'm still on top, sort of. What do you think about that and how that's kind of changed? Because the college football landscape has changed, like absolutely. So how do you think that had a piece of it or a reason for him wanting to leave, or it was just he was done?
I think that's the biggest piece for sure. I think that was known for the past couple years, and I think he's made it known. I don't really know how that. I didn't hear Reggie Bush's or read it, but I don't know how that's like a knock on him when if he was a new coach and like this is like a new quick run, maybe if you want to say
Right.
that, I
Yeah.
guess I don't know, but I'm like, he's dominated for so long. How long? How many changes does someone have to continue to stay through to make to appease you? He's gone through so many. The game's evolved and changed in a lot of ways already,
Right.
and now this is a big one, and this is a confusing one for sure. But at age in his early 70s,
72.
I
Yeah.
I don't understand what Reggie Bush means by that. Like, how can you knock him? I think like, yeah, like it's a new landscape. is he young enough to see? I think eventually they'll try to, for better or for worse, they're going to put some restrictions on it or try to like put
Yeah.
some governors on it, and we'll see if that's going to be better or could make it worse for these players. I don't know, but is that what he? So like 5 more years would that have appeased him to see how he did with it? He survived many eras. He survived the BCS era, the college playoff era. I think, and technically the NIL era. He got to a college playoff
Yep.
like this year, so I
Right.
don't really know what he means.
And what's the worst thing that's going to happen in Alabama? They're going to lose that backup 5-star offensive lineman. You know what I'm saying? Like they won't be as deep. You know what I'm saying? Like that's pretty much it. You know, you're not going to have that like that those amazing running back rooms like they had in the past or wide receivers that they had in the past. Because again, some guys are just going to go if they don't play, which is the transfer portal and all that stuff too. Like which is understandable. I just like what Alabama can't pay NILs either. Like you know what I'm saying? Like how big Alabama is. Like I don't think it's going to affect him. Yes, it would have affected him, but I don't think to the point where he's not going to do well. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it's like taking a Tom Brady from Bill Belichick. Like I don't think it's going to have that type of effect on Nick Saban. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't think that's going to be. I think Saban would have been fine.
No, I think what it is that old school, and he's had to make adaptation adapt himself, but that old school way is not going to really last as much. I'm not saying that you can't have those foundations, but ripping a kid, being really hard on him, being this is my program,
Right?
that's going to change for sure. Like that's harder because then the kid could be like, I don't want to be here no more.
Right. I'm out. Yeah.
And so like yeah, like that's different, but I don't think that takes anything away because I mean he's you look at speaking of Pete Carroll, that run was really like 02 through 06 or 07. They looked at USC,
Yeah.
got a couple of titles, and that's a heck of a time. Tom Osborne's time.
Yep.
That little like dynasty like he had in Nebraska. If that's a dynasty to you, Jose, I don't know, but I don't know how you feel about
I
three
don't.
national titles in 4 years. I don't know, but
That's a
maybe.
dynasty. He's got the
Oh,
third one.
so okay. So all right. Uh, yeah. But
Anyway,
anyway, yeah, crazy. But anyway, I just think like those were really long, great runs. Bobby Bowden in the '90s, what a great run! But it's just like, come on, man, he did it. They won that first title in 2009, and just that dominance that just kept going throughout, a whole decade, and then into the 2020s.
yeah,
Like, come on, like that's just impressive. Like you can't knock it. And I think that's maybe Reggie Bush is trying because USC was getting like that praise
yep,
before Saban in Alabama. Like, look at what we're seeing here. And I feel like, and to me, thank goodness, Saban in Alabama made people forget about USC. That and the sanctions.
yeah.
So it's like,
That helps. Yeah,
yeah, I'm glad. So I don't know if Reggie Bush is just being a little salty, but I don't understand that critique.
yeah. I didn't either, and I was just, I was thinking about the show obviously, and I saw that, and I was like, yeah, that's a something I wanted to bring up because I don't think it affected him. And you talked about sanctions, man, and that's another thing that I was thinking about too, Deremy, and it's just like he has this long run, this so much success, and look, is every program squeaky clean? No, like absolutely not. But that's a long run, man. Like without having like major sanctions and having all that success and all these amazing players come out of that program. Like, are you surprised that you can have that run and nothing really major is coming out of that and stopping it in that fashion? Like in terms of like, because people are salty, man, and the LSU's of the world, the Ole Misses of the world, like they can try to come up with some stuff. And to me, it was nothing really major that came out of this program that hurt this program.
Part of me is surprised just because of where he's at. No offense, but just like those big, SEC type schools, and
Yeah,
we know in those schools, those. It's not just down south; it's all over. But a lot of those schools, get pretty dirty. But I think I, Nick Saban just kind of seems like he's a by the book kind of
Yeah.
person. So I think in a way I don't feel as surprised, but it's almost now just as impressive to. It's almost like you got to put there, like to have a good run and to not have these sanctions or not have the NCAA breathing down your neck. So that is doubly as impressive.
Yeah, like I haven't even like throughout this run, mate. I didn't even think about that, man. And then I was just like reflecting on his career, and I was like, man, like normally, typically, like again, we talk about Pete Carroll, right? Like USC, like a lot of people say, he left USC because he knew what was coming. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he took that job in Seattle because he knew what was coming at SC, and this is not the case for Saban. And honestly, I'm thank God. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm so happy about that because again, like you see that so often where coaches leave because again they know what's coming. They know that it's going to hurt the program. He didn't have to do that. He left on his own terms. But are you surprised, Deremy, that he's leaving after losing in the playoff game, not going out on top? Like
Losing
that's
to Michigan.
yeah.
Yeah. That'll always be
This guy,
remembered.
man.
Michigan Wolverines stopped.
They broke
That's
they
Nick
broke
Saban.
him. Yeah.
Yep. All right, Michigan. But I'm not. I'm surprised. Honestly, with Nick Saban, I felt like he had 1 year left in him.
Yeah, I don't
You
think that
just can't.
matters to him, right? Like I don't think that going out like that is a big deal to him.
No, I don't. I don't. I think it does and it doesn't. And I think honestly, just it's weird because this isn't Nick Saban. Like I feel like he's very much like either you win or you don't win. He's not a moral victory guy. But I feel like what he did, this was a really good coaching job he did this
Yes.
past year,
Yes.
and getting them to play better down the stretch and beating Georgia in the SEC title game. So I felt like he kind of knew, like he took this team, getting them to the Rose Bowl and losing in a tight game. Like I think he put them in a good spot, and I think also he just was like, do I go through spring ball and this and that and all these things? And I think it matters to him to try to leave a place better. And I think he probably was like, hey, so you can hire somebody else, and they're not too much behind the eight ball. So I don't think that matters to him. To answer your question.
Yeah, and they hired someone. Both these positions already been filled, which I was really surprised at. I keep almost calling him OJ Mayo. I don't know why, but Jared Mayo and with the Patriots and Kalen DeBoer, your new head coach for Alabama football, man. Like I was surprised by that too. He doesn't have that long pedigree that a lot of other coaches had that could have had that job, like a Nick Saban coming into Alabama. So I was surprised also that those jobs got filled so quickly.
I kind of Alabama a little bit, but not so much with the Patriots because Gerard Mayo's been kind of talked about.
Yeah, he's been groomed. Yeah,
And so I do think it was kind of like with that. But I do feel like it's just interesting how these guys did go out. And I kind of do wonder. Now, college, it's a little bit different than the pros, but when you look at that guy who's doing it all, we've talked about Jimmy Johnson a lot doing it all, being the coach and the personnel guy. We talk about Bill Walsh. If listen to our episode that's coming out this week on the 88 Niners. Do you think that really can make it in football? Like when you're wearing those many hats?
not for like you can't sustain that. I don't think I've seen so many coaches, and you named a couple that have those wear all those hats, and it's just not sustainable, man. It's just again we talked about all the hours you have to put in as a head coach and to game plan and do all this stuff just for that. Now you want to add player personnel and all this other stuff that comes with like a GM type of hat, and that's too much. And I've seen, we talked about Andy Reid before. Like Andy Reid had that in Philly, and I just think that's fastest way for a coach to crash and burn. I just think no matter how great you are, and these coaches are amazing coaches, that we're talking about, it's just not, to me, it's just not sustainable, man. It's just too much pressure, too much, because again, like, it's just too much time invested also. Like, but again, like, if you're the head coach and you're also selecting these players in the draft and these players are not panning out like a New England, like what's going on now, it's just, you're the focal point there. It's just like, all right, you're the guy who's selecting these guys, coaching them, and now you're really struggling. This is all on you. You know what I mean? And it's just, it's tough, man. Like, I don't understand how guys can do that. They try it and they just always eventually, the first thing they do when there's trouble is like, all right, I'm going to relinquish this position. I'm just going to focus on football matters here. So it's tough.
Which is kind of what even college football is going to have to be now.
Yep.
Like, I look at it like, you need someone to kind of run NIL portal. And being like, oh, this kid's a free agent. He's leaving this university. We try to sign him. Blah, blah, blah. Like, I think that's going to be like, in a few years, we'll be talking about it. Can Coach so-and-so be the coach and the NIL GM? Like, you know what I mean? I think like that's where we're going to be going. So it kind of is like, could Nick Saban do both? I don't know if he could have done both. Like,
no, that's a good point. I think that's something that, college football is going to definitely have to look at. And I agree with your point from earlier. They're going to figure a way to kind of like cap it and things like that, and maybe restrict a few things. But, there's, players already reaching out on social media, the Alabama players, like, hey, like, why don't you like come to our school and things like that. It's crazy. Like, I don't know if it's good or bad, for college football. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the NIL is good for the players. I think they deserve it. Most of them deserve it because they are making a lot of money off these guys, millions and billions of dollars, off these guys. So I am happy for the players. But it's definitely, college football is different, man. It's changing, So yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. So
one thing I want to, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Deremy. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you this. I know we're going to be wrapping up soon, but when you look at the Alabama, two-part question. How would you define the Alabama dynasty, and how would you define this Patriot dynasty?
For me, and obviously great dynasties and two of the best dynasties of all time. I look at what the Patriots did, and I don't think it's never going to happen again. Like, there's no way that can happen. I think there's a better chance of it happening in college football. Now, again, with everything we just talked about, with how college football is changing, I'm starting to really think differently about that. But what the Patriots did in New England, it's like, it's never going to happen again, man. Like, there's no way that can happen. And I mean, also, they had a lot of luck, man. Like, quarterback stayed healthy forever. They had a great coach, a great owner, like, things like that. I just don't think with free agency and all of that stuff, man, like, they just hit on a lot of things at a great moment, and it was just, they were able to have a lot of success. So for me, man, like, I don't think what the Patriots did is ever going to be done again. Now with Alabama and that dynasty, man, like, it's just, I was thinking earlier again, man, like, I was like, man, like, that dynasty, like, changed college football or whatever. And we talked about Urban Meyer when he was in Florida, and again, like, this Nick Saban team, like, what it changed for me was like what the SEC became. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just because when we were growing up, the SEC was a good conference, but it was Tennessee, Florida, Alabama won sometime here and there. It was totally different from what it is now. And the SEC became almost like a professional league. You know what I mean? Like, these last 10, 15 years. And I think a huge part of that, obviously, is what Nick Saban did in Alabama and elevating that program and elevating that conference. And what it did also is made everyone else in that conference have to, like, really, really step their game up and change a lot of things too. And that's exactly what happened. And every team started being successful. And again, that Alabama dynasty and greatness, man, like made so much money for that conference and all those other teams, you know what I'm saying? Like, and those TV deals and all that stuff, man. Like, it was just that impact, because that was going to be my question before you asked your question. It was just the impact of both of these coaches and programs and organizations. Like, I think the bigger impact was what Alabama did, but I think the dynasty that's, for my opinion, that's not going to be captured ever again is the Patriots one.
No, I think Alabama is a little more impressive to me than the NFL one, honestly.
Really? Damn,
Yeah.
I'm surprised by that.
Because I think Alabama, it was dominance.
Yeah, it
And
was.
it was like, honestly, I was surprised when they lost.
Yeah.
You know, the Patriots, I didn't really, very rarely I had that. It was like, oh, like in these, like you said, the Super Bowls, they were all pretty close. It's like they could have gone either way. Um, the Patriots, I think, defined team in a way that I think is hard to find, because I feel like the Patriots, there's a few standout guys who are like obviously Brady, a Gronk, who are like striped Hall of Fame, just wow. A lot of guys for both the runs in the 2000s and the 2010s, like Julian Edelman, like heck of a player, good, but like not like, it's
Yeah.
like he better not be in Canton, in
Yeah.
my
Oh no,
opinion. No
no, no,
offense
no.
to him, no, not to be mean to him, but it's just like he's not that. Danny in that Super Bowl comeback, Danny Amendola and stuff like that. Like, nice player, tough, scrappy, but come on now, like. So I think that's where the Patriots, it just defined team, where bringing people in. People thought Randy Moss, and he's a great talent. I don't think of Moss as a Patriot though.
No.
But people thought he was done.
Yep.
People were like Wes Welker, like, yeah, he's a good little quick returner from the Dolphins. What's he? So I think that's where the Patriots, to me, I give them, they defined team in a way that was just really impressive, and just really like they just fit guys in so well. But it's like the Bama was just such great dominance, and they were the one. And then also, because the SEC got so tough, they weren't USC,
Yeah.
who had like USC. You were like, I don't know who.
They had to beat
Like,
Stanford. USC had to beat Stanford, and that was it.
and that was sometimes. Some of those years, Stanford was awful.
Right.
You know, you know what I mean. So it was like USC's got like a cakewalk to the championship game. Alabama, and that's what the Patriots had in a way, a
Yep.
little bit,
No,
with the AFC
that,
East.
yes, they did. Yes, they did.
Bama had it hard, and Bama wasn't even in the light part of the SEC. Like, the SEC East was a little bit lighter.
Yep. That West is no joke, man.
That West was real tough, and Bama had to go through it every year, and they did their thing. Like, honestly, there was a stretch where if the game was close, it was like, whoa. I mean, we did our episode on the podcast with the kick six. Like, I think part of that, like, that game was amazing, but it was just like Bama lost. Like,
Yep.
whoa. Like I know that feeling. Like, I can't believe, like, that play's crazy, but Alabama actually lost this game. That dominance was just unbelievable. Like, I don't think you'll ever see that again.
No, I agree with both. I mean, I know, again, like, the landscape of college football has changed, but they, like, there's not too many like dynasties like that in college football, that not only that you have success, but you're also like turning first round picks in and out every year. Like, you know what I'm saying? Every single year. And not only first round picks, but they become great players in the NFL. And that's hard to do as well. So yeah, I mean, we're never going to see either one, you know what I'm saying, ever again. So we were very lucky, man, to have that in our lifetime. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know folks watching. I mean, if you're watching the sports podcast on YouTube, I mean, I'm sure you were all tuned into those two dynasties. So I'm definitely grateful, man, that we had this greatness, in full display. You know what I mean? In full display. So I guess my last question for you, Deremy, and we posted it on Twitter. Who do you think had the better career out of Nick Saban and Bill Belichick? I mean, I know it's a loaded question, but
I guess it just depends on how you look at it. I don't know. some just look at it. Depends. It's a lot of people say the NFL is what you reach for. So then, like, to me, it's just like, well, if you're looking at the NFL, over college, that Super Bowl ring, then you're gonna give it Bill Belichick. If I don't really care about that, I probably would say Nick Saban. So far, Nick Saban, but I would give it to Nick Saban. Just as head coaches. Now, if you throw in defensive coordinator stuff, then it's a whole other thing. But
Yeah.
if you go head coach to head coach, only because Nick Saban done it, he did it at multiple spots.
Yep.
Bill Belichick didn't. Nick Saban, he had his Larry Brown, Bill Parcells kind of thing where he couldn't stay still, but then he showed he had his Tom Landry kind of thing where he stayed at one place for a long time and won. Bill Belichick, who knows if he takes another job and he has success, my answer might change. But right now, I'm going to go Nick Saban.
Yeah, I agree. As much as I love Belichick, man, I just think the body of work, you have to lean towards Nick Saban a little bit. And again, we talked about Michigan State and LSU winning the championship, him going to Miami, having some success there. Not that they were blowing the doors off people, but he was building something there too. And we've talked about that in previous episodes. So, and then again, that run in Alabama, and it's just, it's hard it's hard. It's going to be hard to repeat that, man. And again, like I know the NFL with free agency and all that, like that's a different type of like building a team. It's just, I don't know, man. Like, and again, I think if I would say this, my answer would 100% be different if the Patriots were in the playoffs these last couple of years. You know what I mean? Like, and they were still, one of the top teams in the league. Then I'm like, all right, like this guy doesn't matter who you plug in there. He's got Mac Jones and whoever else in there, and they're still making playoff runs and things like that. I would have a different opinion, but I just think that dynasty stopped, and it's just been some struggle, Nick Saban, he stopped, man. You know what I mean? And he stopped this year. It wasn't stopping next year if he would have stayed. It wasn't stopping for another 5 years. I think this was going to continue on as long as he wanted to be there. Would it have been as dominant? No, I don't think so. But he would have still been having one of the top programs in the country.
Yeah. No, I think I'm excited to see Apple TV next month, that docuseries on the Patriot Dynasty.
Yeah.
And I think Alabama needs one like that too.
Yeah.
I've heard some things, but I think Alabama needs a really tight look in on how Nick was with those assistant coaches and all that. I just think it was great to appreciate both of these guys. And I feel like for me, as I can speak for myself, I did appreciate what we saw these past, all the, 17 almost with Nick Saban and 24 with Bill Belichick. I think it's been, I've can say I saw it from start to finish.
Right.
And I appreciated what I saw, and we saw greatness.
Yeah, I did too, and I love seeing that. You know what I'm saying? Like I do. I know a lot of people don't. I know a lot of people after a while start hating teams like that because they're successful and things like that. And you got to appreciate it, man. You know what I'm saying? You got to appreciate that stuff. You got to respect it, man. Because again, like you said, it was greatness, and it was in full display. Big games, not big games. There's a lot of memories that I can think back on, and these two teams were a big part of that. So I'm glad we kind of jumped on this, man. You know what I mean? Like, and it's sad that, again, it is the end of an era, and it's just things are going to be different in college football and pro football for here on out. But we wanted to make sure that we give these two coaches and Pete Carroll as well their respect and their due on this show.
So for the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jose Ruiz, thank you guys for watching Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose. Take care.
Peace.